Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We are back with the Big Blue Sports Podcast. Welcome back. It's great, wonderful to be back on the air for the first time in probably over 2 months, I would guess. But definitely a lot has changed. Of course, as we know, the Super Bowl last Sunday. Congratulations to the Kansas City Chiefs. I say that with absolutely no grudge and unhappiness in my voice whatsoever. But of course, the Chiefs beating the Eagles on Super Bowl Sunday. So, I am your host, Matt Volz, as always. Welcome back to the Big Blue Sports Podcast. And as we start typically talking about some Fredonia athletics, so the winter sports schedule is coming to an end for the most part. A lot of the winter sports are going into their conference championships. The swim and dive team actually began the SUNYAC playoffs today, or the SUNYAC championships, I should say. That is a multi-day event beginning today and ending on Saturday. That is at Erie Community College in Buffalo. So best of luck to the Fredonia State men's and women's swimming and diving team competing in the SUNYAC championships, as their regular seasons have come to an end. The remaining winter sports, the men's and women's basketball teams and the men's hockey team, they will finish up their regular seasons this weekend. So the men's basketball team, they are at home twice this weekend, and then that'll finish off the regular season. So coming off of 2 tough road losses last week against some good teams in SUNY Plattsburgh and SUNY Potsdam, the Blue Devils with 2 home games this weekend. Friday night at 7:30, they will host SUNY Geneseo, and then to finish off the regular season at 4 p.m. on Saturday, the Blue Devils will host the Lakers from SUNY Oswego. SUNYAC playoffs will begin next week, Tuesday, and they will go through Friday and Saturday. The women's schedule looks pretty much the same, just a few different times for tip-off for them, as it'll be 5:30 on Friday against the Geneseo Knights, and then 2 o'clock Saturday afternoon to finish off their regular season, with the SUNYAC playoffs beginning on February 21st. That is, of course, the playoffs for the teams that qualify for the SUNYAC playoffs. Unfortunately, Fredonia State's men's basketball team did not qualify for the SUNYAC playoffs. A team that did qualify for the playoffs, though, the last team in to the SUNYAC playoffs is the Fredonia State men's hockey team at 7-15. The Blue Devils went into last weekend. They were at Brockport on Friday night, which was one of the teams that was chasing them for that last spot. And then Saturday, a home game against a nationally ranked Geneseo program that was going into the game was thought of to be probably a very, very difficult contest. It was not that you didn't go in thinking the Blue Devils had a chance, because, of course, you know, any given Sunday or any given day of any week, you go into any game thinking, of course, you've got a chance. But with SUNY Geneseo being in third place in the SUNYAC, which is somewhat surprising that they're behind, not surprising that they're behind Plattsburgh and Oswego necessarily, because those are 2 very good teams, but the fact that a team that is ranked, that went into this past weekend, ranked 8th in all of Division III for men's hockey, it was a tall order for the Blue Devils, no doubt about that, especially after going up to Brockport and falling in a tough one on Friday night. The Blue Devils really, they needed to win one, and on Saturday night, senior night, they delivered with a 3-2 win, a thrilling back and forth, and absolutely just beyond exciting game. I was on the call for it. Our sports information director, Matt Pallison, was my play-by-play guy alongside me. It was truly a fantastic game, and you got the sense from the get-go that the Blue Devils were not going to be, this was not going to be an easy game for SUNY Geneseo. You really got that vibe early. I mean, SUNY Geneseo went into the game at 16-5-2 overall, 10-3-1 in the conference. The Blue Devils were 6-15 overall, 4-10 in SUNYAC play. So at first glance, it's like, oh, wow, SUNY Geneseo, you know, they're a great team, which they are, absolutely. But you really got the sense it was a scoreless first period, and you really got the sense that the Blue Devils had come to play. I mean, there was a lot on the line for them. They had a handful of seniors being honored in their last home game at Steel Ice Arena. There was a lot on the line for them. And the whole team, there really was not, like, it seemed like the Blue Devils really played as a cohesive unit, and that's something that I've mentioned a few times on the show before, is so crucially important in a team sport like hockey. Crucial in any team sport, but with hockey, because players are specifically grouped together based on how well they're able to play together. On your forwards, you have your left wing, center, right wing, forward line that stays together. On defense, you have your left side and your right side, and they play together. Hockey is just so much it requires so much teamwork, and I thought the Blue Devils did a phenomenal job of working together as a team. And at the end of that first period, when you looked up at the scoreboard and it was 0-0. I mean, Logan Dick, the Blue Devils goaltender, had an outstanding first period. He had an outstanding game altogether. He let in 2, but that's against an incredible Knights team. So Ryan Bailey opened the scoring for the Blue Devils. A minute into the second period, Greg Lee had the assist on that. And Bailey, of course, the Blue Devils leading goal scorer this season. And you just got the sense early on, again, that this was not going to be a game where the Blue Devils were going to bow out easily by any means. Geneseo would answer about 5 minutes after that. Stefan McLakos tied the game, assisted by Tyson Gilmore and Matthew Duran. I keep thinking the whole thing that was going through my mind, seriously, was if anyone's ever seen the movie Major League, there's the shortstop for Cleveland. His last name is Doran, and it's a joke in the movie that he can't field ground balls and all that sort of stuff, and I absolutely love that movie. So that was going through my mind, and I couldn't get it right whether it was Duran or Doran. I think I probably said it 5 times one way and 5 times the other way while I was on the broadcast, but it is Matthew Duran. So he had the assist on the Knights' first goal that tied the game with about 13 minutes left in that second period. But then the Blue Devils again answered their second goal. It was almost midway through the second period. The Blue Devils won a face-off, and Brendan Dempsey, one of their wingers, was standing almost right behind the dot. It was Joe Santoro won the draw, and Dempsey was right there. I mean, I felt like I blinked and I missed the puck going the net because Dempsey was right there. The puck, boom, right to him, just fired it right into the back of the net. Quick shot, just beat the goaltender. So the Blue Devils are up 2-1. And at this point, the Steel Hall crowd was rocking. They were into it. I mean, this was a game that not a whole lot of people thought Fredonia State was going to win, but they were giving Geneseo a real challenge in this. So it was 2-1 at the end of the second. And then about 2 minutes into the third, Jake Blackwell scores on the assist from Curry Woodford. And now it's 3-1. And I think a lot of people in the arena are looking at each other going, is this about to happen? Are the Blue Devils about to seriously upset the number 8 team in all of Division III on senior night? And then Fredonia State took a penalty with about 7-ish minutes into that third period, and Jared Thomas was able to score on the power play for the Knights, assisted by Duran and Gilmore again. Both of them had 2 assists. So it was a 3-2 game. And from then on out, the Blue Devils played some lockdown defense. I mean, they were very... They played very tight to opposing forwards. Their defense blocked a handful of shots. There were, at one point, I think it was after his goal, in the middle of the third period, Jake Blackwell for the Blue Devils, he blocked 3 shots on one shift. And after his third block, I think it was a slap shot from way out by the blue line that Blackwell just dove in front of it and blocked it, and he had 2 of his teammates helping him to the bench. And I think I said something on the live stream, something about that's how you sacrifice the body for the good of your team, and that's what great players do. That's what great teammates do. Regardless of great players, take that out of it. Just that's what great teammates do. And that physicality, and I think that bond is what helped the Blue Devils to their 3-2 win. It was awesome. It was an electric atmosphere. If you missed it, I'm sorry, because it was a fantastic atmosphere. It really, really was. So that was what was going on Saturday night. They have 2 games left, both on the road this weekend. Friday night, they are at Cortland, 7 o'clock puck drop, and then they'll finish up their regular season on Saturday night at SUNY Oswego. So those are 2 pretty tough matchups against 2 other playoff teams. I mean, Oswego is the second best team. They're number 2 in the SUNYAC, behind only the Plattsburgh State Cardinals, who just a couple of weeks ago beat the Blue Devils 10-3. And we're ahead 6-0 at the end of the first period in Fredonia. So Fredonia State hockey is in the playoffs. You've got Plattsburgh, Oswego, Geneseo, Cortland, Buff State, and Fredonia are all in. Brockport, Morrisville, and Potsdam. And Potsdam. Did I say Potsdam? I did say Potsdam. I meant Potsdam. I got Morrisville and Potsdam mixed up in my head. So those 3 teams will not be in the SUNYAC playoffs. Of course, the Blue Devils are in for men's hockey. And I did want to take a look at, even though in the other winter sports the Blue Devils did not make the SUNYAC playoffs, I still just want to look at who we're going to see when we get to those championships this weekend. By the way, the SUNYAC playoffs for hockey will start next Wednesday. So a week from today, those will start. Semifinals next Saturday. And then, according to our website, the SUNYAC championships for hockey will take place on Saturday, March 4th. And then after March 4th, we are done with winter sports. We will move on to spring, and we'll get into March Madness in a couple weeks. That's going to be fun. We're going to start talking about March Madness. I really want to every week be talking about March Madness, and I definitely going in, I want to have a whole special where I analyze my bracket, and then at the end I'll talk about how horrendously terrible it is, because that's honestly not even a guess. That's just a guarantee. My bracket busts every single year. This is a bit of a side tangent. I had one year, and I tell this story very frequently. I had one year where, I had 3 straight years, okay? For March Madness, I filled out a bracket through my dad's workplace. It was one of those things where it's like, he would put in he put in like $10 or whatever, and he'd bring home a bracket for me. This is when I was a young kid. And I'd fill out my bracket too, and, he'd fill out his, and sorry, Dad, mine would always be better. And 3 years in a row, the team that I picked to win the whole thing made it to the championship game. And every single time my team lost. 3 years in a row, my championship picked, the team that I picked to win the whole thing, lost in the championship game. And then, of course, this was 2015, 2016, and 2017. So it was 2015, I picked the Wisconsin Badgers to win the tournament. And in the Final Four, I nailed the upset. In the Final Four, they played Kentucky, who was previously undefeated, and they beat them. I think they beat them by 4 or something like that. It was a close game, but they beat them. And I remember the people who picked Wisconsin to beat Kentucky. There were so many people that were just like, "Are you kidding me? You picked Wisconsin to beat? Wow, why would you pick Kentucky to lose? It's a slam dunk. They're going to win the whole thing." And I said, "No, Wisconsin's going to win," and I was right. And I was very proud of that, only to have my hopes and dreams shattered 2 nights later when the Duke Blue Devils defeated my pick, the Wisconsin Badgers, in the championship game. And then the next year, I picked North Carolina to win the championship. North Carolina goes to the championship game. They're playing Villanova. And North Carolina was down by 3 late. And I apologize to any North Carolina fans who might be listening to this, who will be very hurt and get some sad flashbacks when I talk about your team losing the championship, but I'm a Buffalo fan, so I know a thing or two about my team losing championships. So there was about 7 or 8 seconds left, give or take, and the Tar Heels were down by 3, and then I distinctly remember Marcus Page for North Carolina hit this incredibly off-balance 3 absolutely buried the shot to tie the game with like 3 or 4 seconds left. And I definitely was not awake for this. I was like 11, so I was not awake for that. But Villanova got the ball, and I'm thinking as I'm rewatching this the next morning, I'm like, okay, sweet. So all North Carolina has to do is just not allow something crazy to happen, and then they'll go to overtime, and maybe I'll get my pick right. And that's one where if North Carolina would have won that game, I think I would have won. I would have won money. It would have been like probably $15, but like when you're 11 years old, $15 is like that's a decent amount of money. I mean, I'm gonna be 100% honest. When you're in college, $15 is a lot of money, but that's again beside the point. So Villanova had the ball, and they're driving up the court, and Chris Jenkins gets open for a three, and at the buzzer, Jenkins nails the three. Villanova wins, and I lose. And I'm like, are you kidding me? 2 years in a row, my championship pick is lost. And then I decided to one-up myself by doing it again the next year. I picked Gonzaga to win the championship that year. And they get to the championship, and they lose to North Carolina. And I remember saying, North Carolina, are you kidding me? Like, you couldn't have done this last year. If you would have won last year, everything would have been phenomenal. Like, you really couldn't have done this last year. And then I've had, basically, long side tangent aside, I've had a rough go of it with my March Madness championship picks. I mean, in 2018, I picked Virginia to win the whole tournament, and then Virginia became the first ever number 1 seed to lose in the first round. And then I picked Auburn because, for any listeners who might not know, my favorite college football team is the Auburn Tigers. Yes, it's very sad, but in 2019, I picked Auburn to win the championship, and they lost in the Final Four to Virginia. So I think it's a safe bet now. If I pick your team to win the championship, congratulations, you're going to win the championship next year, because that seems like that's always what happens. Anyways, long side tangent aside, let's look at the SUNYAC standings. So I've got the women's basketball SUNYAC standings in front of me. Holy cow, New Paltz is undefeated in conference play. That's honestly incredible. Props to SUNY New Paltz. Seriously, that's awesome. They're 16-0 in conference play, 20-3 overall. They won 17 games in a row. Wow, good for them. SUNY Cortland also was in there. They're the number 2. And then your other playoff teams for women's basketball will be Geneseo, Oneonta, Potsdam, and Brockport, with Oswego, Plattsburgh, Fredonia, and Buff State did not make it. For men's basketball, Oswego leading the way, 15-1. Oswego also has won 17 games in a row. They are 15-1 in conference play, 21-2 overall. Wow, the Lakers have been good this year. Oswego, not the NBA Lakers, but we'll get to that later. Oswego, Brockport, Cortland, Oneonta, and New Paltz are definitely in. And then the results of this weekend will tell, because it's between Geneseo, Plattsburgh, and Potsdam. Those 3 are fighting for the last playoff spot, as Fredonia and Buff State will not make it. The Blue Devils, with 2 games left, they are 2-14 in conference play, 2-20 overall. Buff State has not won a conference game this year. They're 0-16 in SUNYAC play. They are 1-21 overall. They've lost 19 in a row, including 2 to Fredonia State. So props to the Blue Devils for a couple Battle by the Lake wins. Okay, so after that, my long side tangent, and then look at SUNYAC play, we're going to take just a short break, play a little bit of music for you, and then when we come back, we'll talk about some scores around the NHL and NBA, as well as talk a little bit about the Daytona 500 coming up on Sunday, and preview tonight's Sabres game against the Anaheim Ducks. Late start, by the way. If you're a Sabres fan, you might want to make some coffee before the game, because the game doesn't start till 10 o'clock tonight. They're in Anaheim playing the Ducks. These road trips can sometimes be really difficult with the late starts, and it definitely doesn't get better on Saturday because they're playing the Sharks in San Jose at 10 o'clock. But when we come back, we will talk Sabres, we will talk scores around the NHL and NBA, and preview Sunday's Daytona 500, as it honestly feels weird to not talk about football, but it's definitely feels weird to be kind of moved on past that. We'll talk about the Super Bowl just a little bit as well. Really glad you're with us here on WCVF. We'll be right back in just a couple of minutes. Thanks for tuning in.
You close your eyes and kiss your hand, then you blow it. But it isn't meant for me, and I notice if the choice was ours alone, then why'd we both choose letting go? Does it end like this? I've never had a chance to heal your heart. Just a number always counting down to a new start. If you always knew the truth, then the world would spin around you. Are you dizzy yet? Respectfully, some honesty I'm calling out. And do you hear the conversation when we talk about I'll back away to the safety of a quiet house? If there's half a chance in this moment, when your eyes meet mine, we show it out. All talk and not a lot to think. We're living dreams, and shame never crept close to our naked feet. If there's something left to lose, then don't let me wear out my shoes. Am I still walking? I tried, but it rang and rang. I called all night from a payphone. Remember those from another life? If everything I meant to you, you can lick and seal and fold into, have I been so blind? Respectfully, some honesty I'm asking now. Do you hear the conversation when we talk about I'll back away to the safety of a quiet house? If there's half a chance in this moment, when your eyes meet mine, we show it out. Oh, take it all back, take your first, your last, your only. Oh, take it all back, everything you showed me. Oh, this must be how it feels when the feeling goes. I told your eyes I haven't, I've never felt this way. You said I have the shot that stops my clock, maybe it's okay. You said you'd never have regrets. Jesus, is there someone yet who got that wish? Did you get yours, babe? Respectfully, some honesty I'm asking now. And do you hear the conversation when you talk about I'll back away to the safety of a quiet house? If there's half a chance in this moment, when your eyes meet mine, we show it out.
Aw, did you hear? There's gonna be a Valentine's Day themed rock and skate this year. It's gonna be all pink and pretty, and you can even buy roses.
Bro, it's gonna be sick. You can come and ice skate, and we're also gonna have pizza and everything.
But there's also gonna be heart-shaped cookies and cotton candy and...
Yeah, but there's also gonna be music and cool lights and...
Yeah, but it's all about love. I'm gonna bring my boyfriend.
Well, actually, it's for everyone. You can bring a friend or you can skate solo.
Yeah, I get it. It's for everybody.
come on down to Rock and Skate February 19th from 8 to 10 p.m. in the Steel Hall Ice Rink.
Admission is $5 and skate rentals are $4.
Hope to see you there.
Oh, you're my best friend.
And this is WCVF, the campus and community voice of Fredonia.
All right, welcome back, everybody. That song, by the way, was Dizzy by Sylvia Rose Novak on her same title album, Dizzy. I actually like that one. That was a good song. So, as we return to the show, I figure we got to talk about the Super Bowl. I mean, it's the biggest sporting event of the year. Happened last Sunday, and as I opened the show with, the Kansas City Chiefs are the Super Bowl champions. They win their third championship in franchise history and their second in the last 4 years. So let's break down the game and talk about what happened. And, of course, I definitely have some thoughts on the ending, but we'll get there. So the Eagles got the ball to start. And on their opening drive, they went 11 plays, 75 yards in 4 minutes and 51 seconds, capped off by a Jalen Hurts 1-yard touchdown run. And your host, Matt, may or may not have been yelling, "That's my fantasy quarterback," because Jalen Hurts was my fantasy quarterback. So the Eagles take the 7-0 lead, and then the Chiefs get the ball and come driving down the field, and on their next drive, Mahomes hits Travis Kelce for an 18-yard touchdown. That caps off a 6-play, 75-yard drive. Chiefs tie the game 7-7. At the end of the first quarter, we feel like we're in for a treat, and we were to a certain extent. At the beginning of the second quarter, the Eagles drive down the field, and Jalen Hurts with a beautiful 45-yard touchdown pass to A.J. Brown to put the Eagles up 14-7, but the Chiefs would respond via a score from their defense as the Eagles had the ball leading 14-7, and then Jalen Hurts coughs it up. Nick Bolton for the Chiefs picks it up and runs it back 36 yards for the game-tying touchdown. And I was, thinking at that moment that could possibly turn the tide in Kansas City's favor. Not that it was necessarily looking like, oh man, Philly's just going to mop the floor with the Chiefs, because that wasn't the case. But the Eagles were building some momentum. They had the lead and were driving. And then that defensive score happens and you think, oh, wow, so maybe this is where Kansas City kind of comes in and takes over the game. And that didn't happen either. It was a good back and forth. The Eagles get the ball back, and they respond to that. Jalen Hurts, I thought, responded to that very well. They go 75 yards in 12 plays, 7 minutes and 19 seconds, capped off by a Jalen Hurts 4-yard touchdown run to put the Eagles back up 21-14. And then their defense would get a stop, and they'd move down the field. Jake Elliott connecting on a 35-yard field goal to end the half. Eagles leading 24-14 at halftime. The Chiefs got the ball to start the third quarter, came down the field, and a 10-play, 75-yard drive was capped off by an Isaiah Pacheco 1-yard touchdown run to cut the Eagles' lead to 24-21. And then late in the quarter, with about a minute 45 to go, Jake Elliott with a 33-yard field goal. That capped off a 17-play, 60-yard drive, Eagles leading 27-21 at the end of the third quarter. Now that right there, if you're looking at a point where the Eagles could have started to run away with a little bit and the Chiefs kept themselves in it, it's that right there. The fact that a 17-play drive only results in 3 instead of 7 to keep it as a one-score game when there was still plenty of time left, that's a huge spot in the game, and that's one that Eagles coach Nick Sirianni could definitely be losing some sleep over. So the Chiefs get the ball. Beginning of the fourth quarter, they drive down the field. Patrick Mahomes hits Kadarius Toney, who was wide open, for a 5-yard touchdown, and the Chiefs take a 28-27 lead. That was their first lead of the Super Bowl. Spoiler alert, they wouldn't trail again, as they get the ball back, as the Eagles would give them the ball back at the 5-yard line. As it was after, and now I'm trying to re-rack my brain as to what that was. I think that was Kadarius Toney returned a punt all the way to the 5-yard line, and then 3 plays and 49 seconds later, Patrick Mahomes hit a wide open Sky Moore for a 4-yard touchdown, and the Chiefs took a 35-27 lead. Eagles get the ball back though, and Jalen Hurts drives his guys down the field. 8 plays, 75 yards, capped off by a Jalen Hurts 2-yard touchdown run. His third rushing touchdown of the Super Bowl. And then they go for 2. And, of course, Hurts runs, and he gets it to tie the game at 35-35 with 5:15 to play. The Chiefs get the ball, and they drive down the field. Kansas City has a 3rd and goal at right around the 4 or 5 yard line. Mahomes drops back to throw and throws a pass intended for Juju Smith-Schuster that's incomplete. However, a little bit of yellow laundry was on the field as the referee, Carl Cheffers, called Eagles defensive back James Bradbury for a defensive hold, which gave the Chiefs an automatic first down. And with 8 seconds left, Harrison Butker connects on a 27-yard field goal. The Chiefs win Super Bowl 57, 38-35. One of the highest scoring games, or one of the highest scoring Super Bowls of all time. Honestly, one of the best Super Bowls. It really was a phenomenal game from start to finish. It was an excellent game. The end, however, it leaves, it's tough when a game of that importance ends with a penalty. It's kind of an unsatisfying end to a game. Like you would want a game to end on like a last second touchdown, or like even a last second field goal is not, there's some drama there. You don't really want to see the game ended on a penalty, and you really don't want to see the game ended on a penalty when it's something that has not been being okay, something that was not being called through the duration of the game. Carl Cheffers, who was the referee for Super Bowl 57, him and his crew called more penalties than any other officiating crew in the NFL this season. And they officiated the Super Bowl. And for the majority of the night, up until that point, they had allowed, defensive backs, they were letting that stuff go. Kind of like grabbing the receivers a little bit of jersey tug. They were letting that stuff go. And then on a crucial play, probably the biggest spot in the game, they call it. And it was something that was like, yes, Bradbury did tug at the back of his jersey, but it was not any kind of an egregious hold. And it really leaves a bitter taste in people's mouths when it's something that has not been called all night, and now in the biggest spot in the game, it is. Definitely a tough way to end. And James Bradbury, to his everlasting credit, came out and faced the media and said, yes, that was a hold. I did hold him. I made a mistake in a crucial spot in the game. And I have a tremendous amount of respect for him for saying that, to be honest with you. That shows what a good sportsman he is. But, man, that's a tough way to end a Super Bowl on a call that's like, yeah, I guess technically, but I don't know. I don't know about that one. So Patrick Mahomes was your MVP. 21 of 27 passing. He threw 3 touchdowns. Mahomes only threw for 182 yards. That's got to be, at least in my mind, that has to be like one of the all-time lowest passing yard totals for a quarterback who won Super Bowl MVP. I know he threw 3 touchdowns. Let's look at the 3 touchdown passes that he threw. He threw a 5-yard touchdown pass to a wide-open Kadarius Toney. He threw a 4-yard touchdown pass to a wide-open Sky Moore. And he threw an 18-yard touchdown pass to Travis Kelce. I'm not saying that's not impressive. 3 touchdown passes in the Super Bowl is a heck of a lot better than I could do. But the fact that he won Super Bowl MVP, despite the fact that he threw for just 182 yards, and 2 of his 3 touchdown passes were 5 yards or less to guys who were wide open, I don't know. I think that if you were talking about take who won or lost out of it for a second, the guy who deserved to win MVP more than absolutely anybody else was Jalen Hurts. Guy had a phenomenal game. Hurts was 27 of 38 passing for 304 yards and the 1 touchdown. Rushing the ball, Hurts ran the ball 15 times for 70 yards and 3 touchdowns. That could, I would have to double check this, and I will double check this, but I'm almost thinking that might be the record for the most rushing touchdowns by a quarterback in a Super Bowl. NFL record for most rushing touchdowns by a quarterback in a Super Bowl. Let's find out. I'm interested now. I'm intrigued. And I apologize if you can hear the typing. I want to know. And I think it is the record. Oh, he tied it. He tied it for the most rushing touchdowns overall. It's the most by a quarterback, though. So the record for the most by a quarterback was 2. Jim McMahon had 2 when the Bears beat the Patriots in Super Bowl 20. So, like that the guy sets the record for the most rushing touchdowns by a quarterback in a Super Bowl and ties the record for the most overall rushing touchdowns. Hurts played a phenomenal game. I felt bad for the guy. I really felt bad for him because he left everything out there. He played a heck of a game. Definitely too bad to not see him come out on top. But that was your Super Bowl. Definitely an absolute thriller as the Chiefs beat the Eagles 38-35. And with that, we put football season out of our... Well, we don't put it out of our minds. Let's face it. We never put football season out of our minds. At least if you're like me, football season is never out of my mind. But the NFL season has come to a close. We will get to things like the scouting combine is actually in a couple weeks. But we'll get to things such as the NFL draft in about 2 months or so. Free agency will be getting around there in a month-ish. And then the start of the new league year in there as well as we kind of go into the NFL offseason. So we're going to take just another short break. When we come back, I'm going to talk about scores around the NHL and the NBA, as well as previewing Sunday's Daytona 500. And then we're going to finish off the show today previewing tonight's Sabres game against the Anaheim Ducks. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. It is wonderful to be back in the studio for another semester of the Big Blue Sports Podcast. Really appreciate everyone tuning in on 88.9 WCVF FM Fredonia or tuning in live on FredoniaRadio.com. We'll be back in just a few minutes.
Got no money, babe. Can't do a thing for you. Got no money, babe. Can't do a thing for you. 'Cause I ain't been living right, but I sure had fun last night. I ain't got a dime left for you. I swear one of these days, yeah, I promise, I swear one of these days, when my family turns to feast, I'm gonna take you out to eat. We gonna spend every dime on you. Tonight, baby, I'll be saying the blues. Yeah, tonight, baby, I'll be saying the blues. $100 for my pay. Let's go drink it all away. You and me, we gon' live like a king and queen. You and me, babe, we gon' live like a king and queen. Make a kingdom from this bar, expensive drinks and cheap cigars. You and me, we gon' live like a king and queen. Don't you worry now, dry your eyes. Don't you worry now, dry your eyes. It ain't enough to pay the rent, might as well spend every cent. And tonight, we gon' be on top again. For just one night, we gon' be on top again. Yeah, tonight, we gon' be on top again.
Covering Dunkirk, Fredonia, and all of northern Chautauqua County, this is WCVF 88.9 FM, The Voice.
As you may have heard on one of the earlier promos, we got a pretty fun Fredonia Radio Systems event coming up this Sunday. The Fredonia Radio Systems is putting on Rock and Skate this Sunday, February 19th from 8 to 10 p.m. at the Steel Hall Ice Arena for a night of Valentine's Day themed music, food, and ice skating. This event also features fun activities such as raffles and rose buying for your special someone or a friend, and is being emceed by FRS's very own Lover Call. Admission is $5 with $4 skate rentals. For more info, contact us at frs@fredonia.edu or on Instagram at Fredonia_radio. So Rock and Skate should be lots of fun. Again, that's Sunday from 8 to 10 p.m. Speaking of Sunday, if you're like me, and now that football season is over, you have no idea what to do with your Sundays, might I suggest the return of the NASCAR Cup Series. I know some people might look at NASCAR and be like, wow, it's a bunch of cars going in a circle. That's absolutely thrilling. My goodness, my eyes are just glued to the television right now. But it's something that, it's one of those things, if you grow up watching it, it's like you'll watch it for your whole life. If you grow up thinking it's stupid, you'll probably think it's stupid. But the Daytona 500, otherwise known as the Super Bowl of stock car racing and the Great American Race, is scheduled for 2:30 this Sunday afternoon at Daytona International Speedway down in sunny and warm and hopefully not raining Florida. And that race will be broadcast on Fox as it has been every year since, I think, like 2007 now. It's been on Fox. It used to alternate. They had it it was on CBS for years. And then they alternated it in the 2000s. They would have it would be on Fox on odd-numbered years, and then it'd be on NBC on the off years. But they did, I think, starting in 2007. Since then, it's been on Fox every single year. So the Daytona 500 is something that I'm definitely very excited for. I look forward to it every single year, despite the fact that my favorite driver at this moment in time has never won the Daytona 500, but he's also only been in NASCAR for a short while. For those of you wondering at home or wherever you're listening to the Big Blue Sports Podcast, my favorite NASCAR driver is Chase Elliott. He has not won a Daytona 500 to this point. However, he is one of the favorites. And there's a lot of other drivers who are definitely could be in the running to win this literally, for anyone who might not watch NASCAR, there's a lot of people who have never watched a NASCAR race in their lives. And they know what the Daytona 500 is because it's the biggest race of the season. So allow me to take a second to explain what NASCAR Speed Weeks is. It's kind of the lead up. It's almost NASCAR's equivalent of the preseason. But it takes place, it used to take place all at Daytona. So they have a race. Usually it used to be the week before the Daytona 500. Now they've put it 2 weeks before. So this was back on February 5th. It's called the Busch Clash, and it's basically a shortened exhibition race to kind of get everybody warmed up and back into the swing of things. It used to be at Daytona. It is now at the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum. It has been the last 2 years. They also have for Daytona, the qualifying is tonight, actually, at 8:15. So what they do, how they set the lineup, is they basically have these qualifying. The best way I can describe them is their heat trials. You know, you do 2 laps, and the fastest times get to start in the highest spots. However, for Daytona, it's just a little bit different, as they have some other exhibition races on Wednesday. So that's tonight. The top 2 qualifiers, the top 2 speeds, will start first and second in the Daytona 500 on Sunday. The rest of the order will be determined by the 2 races, the Blue Greens Vacations duels, that will take place tomorrow night. So what Daytona does is they split the field in half. So on the Thursday night before the Daytona 500, they run 2 20-car races that determines what cars will start where in the race, and it also determines what cars will make the race, because a lot of low-budget, smaller teams will be fighting for a spot just to be in the Daytona 500 in general, and that's where they will try to make it. There's a handful of drivers that will need to qualify their way into Sunday's race. Again, a lot of smaller, low-budget teams. And then there's Jimmy Johnson. For anybody who doesn't know who Jimmy Johnson is, he is one of the greatest NASCAR drivers of all time. He was my favorite driver before he retired. He's a 7-time NASCAR Cup Series champion, which is tied for the all-time record with Richard Petty and Dale Earnhardt. More on Earnhardt in a second. And he is a 2-time champion of the Daytona 500, the only driver to win 5 championships in a row. This man won 5 titles in a row, 2006 through 2010. It was really a fun time. Well, it was a fun time if you were a fan of his, not so much if you were not. So the Daytona 500, again, starts at 2:30. It usually will last somewhere around like 3 hours-ish, but the problem is sometimes in February down in Florida, you get rain. They can't run in the pouring rain because it's not good for track conditions. So the long rain delays sometimes make it so that it is a very, very, very lengthy ordeal. But hopefully it won't be too much of an issue. Speaking of NASCAR, before we go and talk about the Sabres, I always used to do, in the first semester, I always used to talk about this day in sports history or whatever. And today is actually a really cool one because today there's 2. So 25 years ago today, while we're on the topic of NASCAR, I figured I'd hit this. 25 years ago today was the Daytona 500 in 1998. And going into that race, Dale Earnhardt, 7-time champion, one of the greatest racers of all time, had still never won this big race. This was like the only thing that he had never done, is he had never won the Daytona 500. And every single year, he would like dominate the race, and then something ridiculous would happen at the end of the race and he would lose. Like there was one year where he was leading the race with like 4 laps to go and then he ran out of gas. That was 1986. In 1990, he dominated the entire race, and then with half of a lap to go in the entire race, he ran over a piece of metal or whatever else and blew a tire and lost. There were a handful of times that he was in wrecks. He flipped upside down in 1997 and then finished the race. That would never be allowed today. He literally, this is one of my favorite stories ever. This is 1997. He was in a crash and his car literally like flipped upside down several times and was shredded to pieces. And so they help him out of his car, and he's walking towards the ambulance. And in typical Earnhardt fashion, he turns around, looks at the car, and by the way, just a little tidbit here, for NASCAR, every time you're in a wreck, they basically take you to the care center. They have one right in the infield of those tracks and clear you, make sure you are all right. So they were about to load Dale in the ambulance, just take him. They always do that as a precaution. So they were going to take him to the care center, and he turns around and looks at his car and goes, the wheels are still on that thing. That's still drivable. So he literally walks away from the medical professionals and gets back in his beat-up race car. They duct taped the entire back end of this car on, and he finished the race. That is my favorite Dale Earnhardt story of all time because it is literally exactly, describes to a T what this man would do. And on February 15th, 1998, 25 years ago today, after 20 years of failure, Dale Earnhardt finally won his first and only Daytona 500 before his untimely death in 2001. It was an amazing day. It was like the weight off of his shoulders. The one thing finally accomplished. He had finally won the Daytona 500. It was a great moment for everybody involved in NASCAR. And maybe someday I'll go more in detail about that. And the interesting thing is, so Earnhardt was killed in a crash in the Daytona 500 in 2001. 3 years after that, in 2004, so 6 years to the day after his father won his first Daytona 500, Dale Earnhardt Jr. also won his first. I love that. I think that every February 15th about how the same day was when both of them won the biggest race of the year for the first time, which is just really, really cool for me as a NASCAR fan and an Earnhardt fan to be able to say. So we're going to take another short break, and then with the last couple minutes of our show, we're going to just talk quickly about tonight's Sabres game against the Anaheim Ducks. Sabres After Dark, puck drop scheduled for 10 p.m. tonight. We will be right back. Thanks for tuning in on WCVF.
1, 2, 3, 4, 1. September 17. For a girl I know it's Mother's Day. The sun is gonna be, yeah, yeah. And that's where he will stay. The wind and the weather vane, the tear in blue eyes sailing, as the Falstaff sings a soulful refrain for a boy on Fiddler's Green. This tiny knotted heart, well, I guess it never worked too good. The timber tore apart and the water gorged the wood. You can hear her whispered prayer for the man mass is always lean. The same wind that moves her hair moves a boy through Fiddler's Green. Nothing's changed anyway. Oh, nothing's changed anyway. Anytime today. He doesn't know a soul. There's nowhere that he's really been. But he won't travel long alone. I'm not in Fiddler's Green. Balloons are filled with rain, and the children's eyes are sleeping. And the flag sings a soulful song
a boy on Fiddler's Green. For a boy on Fiddler's Green, yeah. For a boy on Fiddler's Green, Starman. For a boy on Fiddler's Green. Love you, Gord.
Hey, thanks for listening to WCVF 88.9 FM, the campus and community voice of Fredonia. Stay tuned for more music, news, and entertainment.
To finish off this Wednesday afternoon, I wanted to talk about the Sabres game tonight against the Anaheim Ducks. Puck drop is scheduled for 10 p.m. Buffalo comes in at 26-22-4, but on a 4-game losing streak, and the last 3 have been particularly bad. A 5-1 loss against Carolina back on February 1st, a game I somewhat unfortunately attended. Saturday, a 7-2 loss against the Calgary Flames, and losing on Tuesday night 5-2, or Monday night rather, 5-2 against the Kings in Los Angeles. Ducks are also coming off of back-to-back losses, a 6-3 loss to the Penguins last week, and then a 7-2 loss in Vegas against the Golden Knights. The Sabres are not too far out of a playoff spot, definitely still in the mix for it 100%. They have 56 points. Last I checked, I believe they were 6 or 7 points out of a spot. I think 6. So if the Sabres can really string some wins together and, first of all, just break this losing streak that's been, the last 3 have been particularly ugly, but if they can just get out of this little rut that they're in, Buffalo is still very much in play for playoff spots. Other games tonight, 7 p.m. in Toronto, the Leafs hosting the Chicago Blackhawks.
Good afternoon. You are listening to WCBF 88.9 FM.
Alrighty, and that will do it for this evening's show.
Bring you
Thanks for tuning
National
in.
Public Radio's
Have a good week,
All
everyone.
Things Considered.